My name's Alan Fierce. I'm currently the president of the board for OARS. Thank you all for coming. Welcome, OARS members, stakeholders, interested members of the public. I'm going to recognize Senator Jamie Eldridge, our state senator, is here in the audience tonight. The quick outline of events tonight: we're going to have a very brief business meeting, as we always do with this annual meeting. And then we're going into a presentation about the release of our first report card for our rivers, something we've been working very hard on and are excited about showing you. You're the first folks who get to see it. It is being released publicly tonight. So this has been a year of successful transitions with our staff scientist, longtime staff scientist, Sue Flint, moving on to DEP. Sue's been very generous with her time in making that handing over of her responsibilities quite seamless. And our new water quality scientist, Ben Wetherill, has ably gotten the field season off to a great start. Is Ben here tonight? Ben? And lastly, we're always grateful to Julia Carano, where's Julia, for organizing this annual event and almost all the events we do. There's Julia right there. And I want to give many thanks to the OARS volunteers who are also here tonight helping out. So, quickly, we're going to move as fast as we can. Our plan is to get you out of here, if you looked at the agenda, by 9 o'clock. We know that the debate starts then, but hopefully you hit your DVR and we'll be able to watch it as soon as you get home. So we're going to try to move. The first part of the evening's events is approval of the minutes of last year's meeting. So for that, we need a motion from a board member or a member. Pete?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Is there discussion on the minutes from last year's annual meeting? Seeing none, I'm going to move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. It's unanimous. The minutes are approved. The financial report. I think you've all had a chance to see a handout.
It's on the back of your agenda.
It's on the back of the agenda if you haven't. So I can say that OARS has finished 2018 in a strong financial position. You may note there's a decrease in our unrestricted assets. There are two reasons for that. One, you'll recall the market dip in December, but it has now recovered. Secondly, program expenses were notably higher in 2018, and the income to cover this came in 2017. So, thank you, members and others who have helped us make 2018 successful. 50%, only 50% of our budget came from memberships and individual donations from people like you. That's all we get. We get grants and we get donations. And without those donations from you, the members of the public and members, this organization could not do all the things it has been doing. So, support for our local work to protect the environment and communities has been strong and is important to maintain in 2019. We did have a major donor who helped us grow into our new watersheds, especially the Sudbury River. We're now looking to our communities and members to help us continue these efforts. As we see daily, federal actions are challenging environmental protections and federal budgets. Those budgets are decreasing, and organizations like OARS need to step up and fill that gap. And we've been doing that very thing. And with your help, we'll continue to do that. We've also seen changes in the tax laws that are affecting giving to nonprofits. This year, please consider giving pre-tax dollars from your IRAs and 401ks or in other ways. We'd be happy to talk to you about how to make that work. It is a good way to continue your donations and get a tax deduction. So we depend on you to give as much as you can in the coming year, and for that I thank you. With that, I'm going to move on to the next section. We're actually 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Which is the election of the OARS Board of Directors. Now, we do this every year at our annual meeting, and as you can see, we have 3 groups that are on our board. An individual member serves a 3-year term, and this year we have that second group, Group B, that is up for re-election. The nominating committee has nominated 3 individuals. The first is Don Byrne, who currently serves on the OARS Board, and he's active in land conservation and in trails in Westborough, where he lives. The second is Lisa Vernegaard. Lisa currently serves on the OARS Board and is the Executive Director of Sudbury Valley Trustees. Lisa is a resident of Maynard. And thirdly, and this is a new person we'd like to add to the board, Paul Fitzgerald. Paul is a CPA in general practice with his office in West Concord. He holds a BA in economics from Hobart College and an MS in accounting from Bentley. Paul serves as a commissioner on the elected board of commissioners of trust funds of the town of Lincoln and lives in Lincoln. Those are our 3 nominees. Are there any nominations from the floor? Not seeing any nominations from the floor, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept this slate. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? This is just to have us close the nominations and accept this slate, and then I'm going to have you vote. So, all in favor of this being our slate of nominees, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. It's unanimous. So this is our slate. I'm just going to ask for a single vote then to approve this slate for election to the board. I suppose I ought to ask for a motion. Pete? Seconded?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of these 3 nominees being elected to the board for 3-year terms, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. It's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Moving quickly. We now have a section in which we're going to recognize the contributions of 2 long-term water quality monitoring volunteers, Fred Yen and David Downing. And I'd like to ask Fred and David to come forward. Fred has been getting up extremely early in the morning for 12 years to collect water samples from our rivers. And David has been getting up extremely early since the turn of the century. So I want to say to them, it's because of you and your fellow citizen scientists that we have the water quality data for the report card that we're releasing today. So thank you both, and we have a small gift in appreciation for your long-standing work for OARS. microphone over to our OARS Executive Director, Allison Field-Juma, who's going to give you a brief presentation on our achievements in 2018. And after that, I think she's going to move right in to talking about the report card. So here's Allison.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is an exciting evening for us. So, I'm just going to talk about 2018, which is always hard because now we're in 2019 and we're already kind of busy. So, anyway, I'll do my best. We have a wonderful board of directors, and thank you for re-electing and electing some new ones. And they're fantastic. The amount of effort that they put in so many different ways really makes a huge difference to us. One of our board members, Paul Goldman, has been running a education program in the upper Assabet in Westborough and Marlborough and some other communities. And one of his innovations is to have future OARS board members in the 5th graders. So here we have 51 from 2018, and in 2019 he had 530 board members. So they're not quite old enough to serve. When they are, we're going to have no shortage of board members. But until then, if anybody here is interested, or if you know people who might be interested and could fill in the gap until these folks are old enough, we would love to have your nominations. So here's the OARS staff. As mentioned, Ben has joined us, which we're really excited about, and he's hit the ground running with getting all our water quality monitoring happening very, very quickly, and adding to boot a new program on bacteria monitoring, and so we're very pleased with that. And Bill Froberg is about to start our education program this summer, and we have our interns and assistants hired to be going out there and doing education and pulling out water chestnuts, so we're in good shape for the summer. We have some wonderful sponsors, and I'm just showing them there. I'm not going to go through them all, but I have to say that between our communities, local foundations, family foundations, federal government, state government, and our members, we have wonderful, wonderful support. Of course, we need more because we just have to all keep going, but that's our job, is to make sure that we do always have enough to get through each year, and we're so grateful also for the in-kind kind of support that we receive. So what have we been doing? We've been measuring pollution, and this is a group of citizen scientists being trained this spring. And as you can see, the water quality that they measure has shown tremendous improvement over the years, but it's not quite there yet because clearly we still have some problems. We are also been working on developing some new scientific methods. We wanted to find a way to map water chestnut that was very reproducible and more efficient. And so last year we had a pilot project to use a drone to map the water chestnut, and it worked very well. Our challenge now is to scale that up so it can be used for the whole watershed, and for any invasives mapping, whether it's terrestrial or on the water, it should prove very useful. We've been working a lot on this idea of communicating science better, and that's where this report card all started. And you're going to hear more about that later. And we've been keeping people involved and up to date on how that's going. And then we do our advocacy work. So some of it is working with policymakers. This is our annual legislative breakfast that we hold jointly with Sudbury Valley Trustees, a wonderful partner. We've been doing testifying. We look at what's coming up, write comments, really weighing in to protect our rivers. And of course, we know the next generation needs to really understand how the water cycle works, how our rivers work, and what lives in them. And we have a wonderful program to do that during the summers, working with the Boys and Girls Clubs for those kids who aren't necessarily going to have an opportunity to be outside and really getting wet, muddy, and looking at strange-looking creatures, which some of them describe as aliens, and really having a great time. So we've also been working hard on improving access to the river, because it's nice to have a river, but if nobody's out there enjoying it, well, it's still nice, but we can do better. So in 2018, we completed the last in our trilogy of maps. We completed the Concord River map, And then because we wanted to be able to see all of the rivers together and encourage people to go to other rivers, we produced a 3-river map. Now this has not been launched yet, but we're going to give you copies here tonight. So that's there, the Concord River map's there as the other 2, and so you can take one home if you like and see how the rivers relate to each other, and it's also online. There it is. And by the way, that's our nifty dock in Maynard that's just super sturdy and steady and really helps people get in and out of the water. Oh, and then we have fun, of course. We have cleanups. We do, well, water chestnut pulling. Yeah, that's fun and very satisfying. We just completed Riverfest with our, among other things, the cardboard boat race challenge, in which people actually, some of them do get around the boat, the buoy and back. And we also have our Wild and Scenic Film Festival in March, which again was sold out and really just a super evening for all of us. We work with partners. If we don't have partners, we are nothing. So much of what is possible is because we talk to each other, we collaborate, we join together in grants, we show up together to lobby for things, and we're just, really, it just makes this job wonderful because of all the people that we get to work with. So in 2019, we're going to keep advocating for a new law on invasive species that has been put forward in the legislature, and we think is really important to making some progress on that. There are permits coming for the other remaining Assabet plants, wastewater treatment plants, and we started our new bacteria monitoring program, which we've been wanting to do for a long time. So of course we have our websites and our Facebook, and we just are very happy that you've joined us and will continue to support our work. So thank you for being part of OARS, and we definitely couldn't do it without you. Oh, that was the last slide. So now I'm going to do a quick segue. So one of the things that we have done over the many years is we've issued a water quality report, which is a lovely bound volume that's used by municipalities and regulators and various people to understand the quality of the water in our rivers. But it's really not accessible to the public. And we talk about, oh, the rivers get better, maybe not, maybe, but we haven't really found an effective way of communicating that. So over the years, we have observed that the other, there we go. We've observed that there's another approach, which is to use a method which people generally understand, which is a report card. We've all experienced report cards at one point or another in our lives. They're a common experience, and they also provide something that can be measured against others so that you can get some sort of human motivation behind raising a grade. And it also can take a lot of data, synthesize it into some data points that people can understand readily. So over the years, I've seen some of our other rivers, like the Charles and the Mystic, use river report cards very effectively. It gets news coverage, it starts to really point out, actually it really embarrassed the town of Belmont when it discovered, like, ooh, that red bit, that's in Belmont. And they couldn't sort of say, oh, the whole river's looking good, but we're not part of the problem. So it can be very effective in terms of communicating those things. So we decided, we looked around and tried to think how we would want to do it, and we decided on a system which has been developed by the University of Maryland. They've been working on various river systems throughout the world, and very iconic river systems, you know, and then there's us. But we're iconic too, right? We've got Minuteman Park, we've got all sorts of fantastic things. So we're joining this great group of rivers and ecosystems by using this same method. It's got a methodology, which is fantastic. And it's got great people who we actually worked with at the Center for Environmental Science in developing this process. So what this kind of river report card does, it's a little different. The other ones were just based on one thing, bacteria. That's it. This one is a different approach. It is very stakeholder driven, It looks at social and cultural and economic and all these other factors. What do you care about for your river? And it's based on defensible science and data, and it synthesizes all that into something that we can understand. And with any luck, it provides some common vision, because you've got a lot of conversations started about it. It's also can be used by many, many different kinds of people. You can have the scientists who really like to dig into the data. You can have people who just need it for some management decisions. And you can have public policymakers use it. And I've heard, but our senator might dispute this, that policymakers like to have something that's on one page. So we went a little beyond that, but not a lot beyond that. And so I think a lot of us like things that are on one page. So actually it's a few pages, but not very many. It's basically, the meat of it is looking at what do we measure, what are the thresholds for that, how do we score that, and then looking at what is that telling us, what kind of trends are there, and communicating the results. And then we said, uh-oh, this is a lot of work. What did we got ourselves into? And that was about 1.5 years ago. So, break it down into a few steps. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. I might defer it to the panel later, but if I can answer easily, I'll do that. So raise your hand if you like. So the first step is to look at what is the big picture. So what are the values? What do we care about? And what are the threats to those values? So the second thing, we've done that. Second thing is then you choose what do you measure? And that's the indicators that we talked about. Then we need to look at, well, what's healthy? How do we figure out, is that a good, is that something that needs to be improved? Is that considered really terrible? How do we define those thresholds for the indicators? We've done that, and then how do you add it up? What are the grades? So finally, we're at the last step, step number 5, which is actually communicating the results. So what I'm going to do is just go quickly. I'm going to quickly go through the process that we did, and so that you can get a sense of it, and then I'll go through actually a few details about how we actually did those bits and pieces, so you understand when you see the final report card, you'll have a sense of what went into it and why and how. At the end of it, we'll have a panel, and you can ask questions, and we can discuss whatever you would like about it. So, here we go. That was the first stakeholder workshop we held in March last year. And that was really trying to figure out the big picture. What are the values and threats? We looked at the different rivers. We discovered, oh, actually, they're pretty different rivers. This one, Assabet, what people were interested in was pretty different from the Concord River. This is just sort of people's reactions of what does this river mean to you? So then we needed to figure out, well, what are the values and threats? So here we did some values assessment, trying to figure out, and then consolidating them. And what we got for the first cut was water quality, water quantity, the ecological side, the habitat for wildlife, public health and safety, and cultural and scenic values, recreation and the economy. And then threaded throughout everything is climate change, because everybody knows that's coming, it's barreling along, and it's going to change almost all of these. And so whatever we're looking at here, we have to take into account that it's going to change, and it may start changing quickly. So that really raises the challenge on each one of them. So then we looked at what were the threats, and we had great fun with wonderful maps, and it broke into groups, and people identified what they felt the threats were. We had a really diverse stakeholder group, which was wonderful. These are folks from Billerica wastewater treatment and water treatment plants, from DEP, from conservation commissions. We had a really great group of people, also from different watershed organizations. So then the second workshop we held was bringing together a slightly more technical group of people to look at, well, what do you measure? Like, are there data for that? So these were folks from USGS and MAPC and other folks. So we had to choose. You can see it was a really fun process. And what we decided was, okay, health, you know what, maybe some of those could move into recreation. Some of them we can't really measure. And we came down to a set of 6. And then we did a test run, where we again broke into groups and we graded, just off the top of our heads, each river. And when we did that, we realized, whoa, the lower Concord is really different from the upper Concord. We should probably grade them separately. And then we had a newsletter, got feedback on that, kept everybody really involved. So then the next question was, what are the thresholds? How do we grade this? So here we go. We have a grading scheme. We had another workshop where we actually worked ourselves on figuring out that grading scheme. And I just here want to give a huge call out to Sue Flint, because she's a data wizard and statistics wizard. And she really did a fantastic job on pulling all of this together. So we pulled it together and then brought back stakeholders. There they are. They're still smiling even after working for a whole morning, which is pretty good. And at that point, we got rid of the economy because we couldn't measure it. We were surprised at how difficult it was going to be to figure out any measures that would be reasonable. But again, maybe that's something we can do in the future. And public health, we really distributed those into the other categories. And then we wanted to really get a little deeper, like, why do we really value this? So people wrote out more detailed statements. And just for example, the scenery of rivers provides joy and serenity in our hectic lives. This is available to everyone for free and should be available to future generations. It changes constantly, especially with the seasons, from subtle to dramatic, always something new to inspire us. So here are the regions. And then we had to figure out, one region's bigger than another one. How do we deal with that? So we have to weight them. Yes, we weighted them. And then we looked at the whole thing one more time. And I'll give you a peek at the gory details. So, first of all, it's all in the methods report, which you can download if you really want to. And it's a good piece of work. But, basically, it was that. And then we drew those into that. And as people attest, we have revised this several times to get it right. So what I'm going to do is very quickly just show you how each of these fits together. So first we'll look at water quality. Any questions so far? You still with me? Going fast, but you're good. Okay, water quality. So we've been measuring water quality for a long time. That wasn't very hard because we already have a water quality index, which we decided to use. But we had pH in it, and pH hasn't changed in a long time. Thankfully, acid rain is no longer an issue. So we decided, you know what has been really important to us is the floating biomass. It's all the algae and duckweed and that stuff that's in the river, which is one of the things that we need to keep track of. So let's put that in instead. So we did. For example, here's dissolved oxygen, different standards for it. We picked the right ones. We figured out, okay, these are the levels, and then that is the score. And then that translates into a grade. So we did that for water temperature, pH, phosphorus, etc. Aggregated them, and that gets you your water quality grade, which is in this one here, and it has aggregated all of those. So we looked at nitrates and phosphorus, which are both nutrients. We looked at suspended solids, which is that turbidity in the water, temperature, biomass, and dissolved oxygen, which is essential for fish and other wildlife, aquatic wildlife. Then, stream flow. This one was tricky. We're trying to figure out, well, if we care about floods more or droughts more, maybe we care about like how far it is from natural. And we cared about the groundwater levels, certainly. So what we looked at was one indicator that's summer stream flow, another one that compares the Assabet's flow, or the Assabet, each of the 3 rivers, to the Squanicook, which is considered by USGS as a relatively naturally undisturbed flowing river. We have one groundwater well in the watershed, which is in Acton, so that applies to them all. And channel flow status is like, if you have a stream and it has banks, you have more aquatic habitat if there's more water going up those banks. And so this is a measure which OARS measures with its water quality program of how much water there is in the stream. So in terms of the alteration, I mentioned we looked at the Squanicook, and there's the Acton well. We did our scoring, and we came up with our grade. Then habitat. This was really tricky. There's a wonderful thing called an Index of Ecological Integrity. It's not updated all that often, but it has over 40 indicators. Some of those are updated more frequently. So we decided that we could use this. So we have that as one thing, but we worked with Sudbury Valley Trustees, thank you SVT, to help us figure out how to do that. And then we picked some of these and then looked at those separately. So for example, impervious cover is critical for water quality and fish habitat. So we used that. We also did a measure of the percent of the riverfront area that's protected. We looked at that. And that was that. So then the next one, there have been some slight adjustments since, let me say that. So then the next one was scenery. So this one, we didn't know what to do. So we talked with our colleagues at the National Park Service who were really interested in using their methodology on a river because they just use them in parks like Yosemite. So we tried it out. So we graded 11 views in the watershed, but we looked at two things, the visual quality and the cultural importance. And I have to tell you, this was a real challenge because it used like just a different part of our brains. We had to think really, really hard to very objectively rate the views based on the methodology. And we had lots of discussions, lots of thinking, but I think it was a really good exercise and it could be very useful in the future. If there are particular views we want to protect, we can go and do an objective assessment of that view. So here we are in the Upper Assabet, Hudson Library, and it didn't do so well there because a couple of things, there are those wires, and then another thing is that you can't quite see it, but there's a big hardware store with all their storage of their equipment right on the edge of the river, not really very scenic. Ice house landings were better. We looked at two things, the scenic quality, which was a very visual assessment, and the view importance, which is this a historic site? Does it have interpretation there? And so it was looking at those other cultural elements. Here we are on Sherman's Bridge in the lower Sudbury River and Fairhaven Bay in the lower Sudbury River. We did not get to the upper Sudbury, that's for this summer. The Upper Concord North Bridge, okay, no surprise there. It got a very high A+ scenic quality and cultural importance. But then, this one we discussed a lot. Bartlett's Landing in Billerica is a beautiful, quiet, gentle spot, but it doesn't have really any visual, contrast, colors, shapes, things like that. So it didn't get as high a score as you might think. So these are, in a sense, they are subjective, but they were as good as we could get for having a very thoughtful process going into it. And here we have the two more industrial sites, which are rated against other urban sites. So it's not like you're comparing that in the scoring against a free-flowing river in the Berkshires. This is the urban assessment. That's Billerica, and then Lowell, and right, that river is Concord River going down, and right at the end of it is the Merrimack River where it ends. So that is how we did scenery. Lastly, we looked at recreation. So the indicators we had were boating access, so the number of put-ins per river mile, and then passage, which is there are a lot of dams on our rivers, and how easy is it to get around them? Sometimes you have to cross roads or rotaries or clamber up steep slopes. So we actually did an assessment to see how easy was it and had a rating system for that. Fish edibility we felt was really important, partly because for a lot of, there are people who live in our communities who depend on the fish, who eat the fish. And that's actually an environmental justice issue. If you're putting up signs, which they are up, that say you can't eat the fish, it's poisonous, that has an impact on people. So we felt that including fish consumption advisories was an important feature. And, a lot of people just like fishing. They also like to eat what they catch, so we included that. The last one was swimmability. We had no bacteria data then, but we started the program and we just got our first results back. So, there's a website, and there's a simpler version which you'll get to take home tonight as a card. And we're at the last step, which is communicating the results. And it's partly thinking through, well, what is the message? What does this thing tell us? Who do we want to talk to about it? Who are people who could talk about it, who could influence what happens with these rivers? And what actions should we try to take? Ourselves, our members, policymakers, etc. So I think a lot of you got this card in the mail. And what you didn't get in the mail is that. So there you have it. So it's not as dramatic as an F. Hang on. And it's not as dramatic as an A. That's too bad, but we have something to aspire to.
Allison, does that apply to everything?
That is for the whole river system. That's bringing together all three rivers. What I'm going to do next is go quickly through each river segment with its score so you can get a sense of, oh, I live there. What's that one like? Just a little bit of time here. Oh, you're right. Yes.
Are you going to explain the color code here?
Oh, good eye. That's an excellent idea. I'm going to explain the color code. So a dark green, such as here, is an A. A minus, A plus. Light green is a B. Yellow is a C. Orange is a D. And red is an F. And then where it's gray, it means you don't have the data yet. All right, ready? Okay. So here we have the river broken down into its 6 sections. For those people who work on the Wild and Scenic River, they must be really happy because the green bits, that's like the Wild and Scenic River. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but it's a good sign. So here we go. Here's the upper Assabet. So the upper Assabet goes from Westborough, up to Elizabeth Brook in Stow, so just before you get to the Maynard line. So one thing about 2018 was there was no drought. There was a lot of water. The rivers were flowing well. That meant there was more dilution. So the water quality, we can be really happy about in general, but it may not look as good in the next time we do this, which will be in 2 years, if there was a drought that year. So we will see. You can see from the upper Assabet that there's still a big influence from wastewater because the main wastewater treatment discharges go into the upper Assabet, starting, unfortunately, at the very top in Westborough. So nitrates is something that is really has been increasing over the years and is at a high level. It's not the nutrient that's necessarily having an effect yet, but if we get phosphorus under control, it could. But it could have an effect in Newburyport, for example, where the Merrimack River enters the sea, because that's where nitrates are the nutrient that has a very deleterious effect, and the EPA is studying that right now. So we need to really pay attention to that. As you can see, for recreation, we've got pretty good access. We've been working a lot on that. Passability is not too bad. But there's a dearth of trails along the river. We like trails along rivers because then people can enjoy the river in another way, from their bike, from just walking, bird watching, whatever it might be. They don't have to be in a boat. And so, yeah, there's room for improvement on the upper Assabet. The lower Assabet is looking a bit better, actually. One thing about the Assabet, it never goes dry. You know why? Anybody know why?
Damn.
No? Yes, there's always wastewater going into the Assabet. In fact, those wastewater treatment plants are some of our main tributaries. So there's always water in it, which they remind us frequently, like, you wouldn't have a river if it wasn't for us. So, okay. So that's one thing. But, it used to be a lot worse. And in fact, the water quality has really improved in the Assabet. But the floating biomass is still a problem. And that's what we really are working on, because that's the eutrophication that we want to get rid of. There are a good number of put-ins. Access is pretty good. There are great trails along the river in this section, quite a contrast. And, we want to get this grade better too, because we like A's. So here's the Upper Sudbury River. I mean, the obvious thing is we have a certain lack of data for the Upper Sudbury. We need to work on that, if you think it's important, that is. So that accounts for the gray there, and we didn't get to it last summer, but we hope to. And this channel flow is actually part of our water quality program, so that's why that's great. This isn't looking too good. D's. Passability, lots of little dams, trails, not so many trails, not so many put-ins. And here is the big red one, an F in fish edibility. This is because of the Superfund site in Ashland, the Nyanza Superfund site, which discharged a large amount of mercury into the river. And so, in fact, on the whole Sudbury south of that discharge in Ashland, no one should eat any of the fish. The lower Sudbury, same fish problem. Trails, a little bit of that problem too. There could be some more trails. But it has very little wastewater going into it, just a bit from Wayland. So you're seeing really good water quality here. And dissolved oxygen is a little low because it's a huge wetlands, and that affects the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. And it's got great scenery. Also, just a word on stream flow alteration. These stream flows are not natural. If you look at the Sudbury River, the levels at the Saxonville Dam go up and down, and it's not because of nature generally, it's because the MWRA is managing the water supply upstream and doing discharges when they need to. So that is very highly altered. It also can completely dry up in the upper reaches. So here we are on the Concord River. Get to be very good water quality in the Concord River, which is great. It's no longer getting as much pollution from the Assabet. That helps. Again, it's a bit altered. The low stream flows are a bit lower than natural. The high flows are a bit higher than natural. So that's its nature now, which could be improved. And we need more trails along the Upper Concord. And in terms of the fish, it's now moved up to a D. Men and women who are no longer bearing children, you could eat the fish 2 meals per month maximum, and nobody should eat the largemouth bass. But it's a beautiful place, historic scenery, lovely to paddle. And then lastly is the Lower Concord. It's an urban area, right? So there are a lot of impacts on wildlife habitat from that. The connectivity, the remaining habitat is very patchy, it doesn't connect to itself. The streams have a lot of interruptions. Just to say, this measure, the habitat, all of those indicators are based on the land area, whereas all the others that we've measured are actually in the river. So these are based on an analysis of the land use. The flows are not natural here, and the fish edibility is improved still a bit more, and it's at the same level as in the Assabet. This is the statewide level, so you can't get better than that, which is too bad, because still children and childbearing women should not eat any fish. But everyone else can have a meal. So we need to work on that. The state has been improving. It's definitely reducing mercury discharges. However, there's a new plan at the federal level to allow coal burning plants to continue to discharge mercury, and that's something that we've been advocating against because obviously we suffer from it. So, there we are. This is the new website. It's beautiful. Go check it out when you get home, if you're not doing anything else. When you go on it, you will see lots of things. But here, if you're on the health page, you can see all the different values. We've got water quality, stream flow, scenery, habitat, recreation, and you can see how it reflects on the river below. And then if you click on any of those, the relevant indicators will light up with the color that they are graded. And, even cooler, if you go to the bottom, you'll see you can do that. Before it was with no station scores, but you can do it with station scores. Now these dots are actually where the data were collected. And then if you click on one of those dots, you can actually see the data. So, and exactly where it is. So that is pretty cool. We also talk about, you can also go by region to look at whichever region you're interested in. And you can also have some issues that we couldn't score, or we wanted to talk about more, like invasive plants and several others, pharmaceuticals, other problems. And then you can also, we have the publications, as I mentioned, the data report card, all sorts of other things are there. And then we also, of course, what is the point of all this? The point is to take some action. So we have some ideas about that. This is one of them. And you can see what you can do there, and it's got also links to other organizations that you might be interested in being involved with. So that's it. I want to give a huge thank you to the donors who supported us, the Massachusetts Environmental Trust, the Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council, through National Park Service, the Sudbury Foundation, one of our local foundations, and then we had partners who we worked with, the EPA, Mass DEP, the Mass Rivers Alliance, and Mass Division of Ecological Restoration, who were all great partners. All those stakeholders who came to meetings, the OARS staff was wonderful. They have stuck with this through thick and thin and made it happen, and the board as well. So I want to thank all of them. And the next question, where you get to stand up and do something, here is, we want to try to figure out what can we do to raise the grade. What do you think you can do? What's important to you? And what can OARS do? So what we're going to do is give you some stickies. You can write what you think you can do on the yellow ones and what we can do on the pink ones. And if you have like you want to tell somebody else what to do, you can add that too. And then you do is you go over there. We've got each of the, so far right is the Sudbury. To the left of that is the Assabet. The middle is all of them together, and the one on the far left is the Concord. And we're going to put up the, we call them beer coasters, and honestly they're beer coasters because we have some for you tonight. We're going to put those up there too, just so you have those to refer to. And then, so we'll have about some minutes, 20 minutes actually, to do that. And then the next thing is we're just going to have a panel. It's a kind of a little panel. We hoped Sue Flint would be able to be here, but she wasn't. So it's going to be Pete Shanahan and me, and we are going to try to answer all your questions. And then that will wrap up the evening. So that is your charge. And I think you can get started. And thank you to Ingeborg and PSC Group for these beautiful maps that she got printed up. We really appreciate them.